History remembers her as a siren, a temptress whose beauty brought the greatest commanders of Rome to their knees. But history was written by her enemies. In truth, Cleopatra VII Philopator was not merely a romantic legend. She was a polyglot who spoke 9 languages, a brilliant strategist, a shrewd politician, and the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. Born in 69 BCE into the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, a lineage founded by Ptolemy I Soter, a general of Alexander the Great, Cleopatra was never ethnically Egyptian. Her family had ruled Egypt from the shimmering Mediterranean port of Alexandria for nearly 3 centuries. Yet, unlike every monarch before her in that 300-year line, Cleopatra did something revolutionary. She learned the native Egyptian language. She embraced the gods, the customs, and the heart of the people she was born to rule. By the age of 18, following the death of her father, Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra ascended the throne alongside her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. By ancient custom, they were co rulers and married in title. But in the shark infested waters of Alexandrian politics, true power could never be shared. Within 3 years of taking power, the young queen was outmaneuvered. Her brother's royal advisors, ambitious court eunuchs and generals, staged a coup. Cleopatra was ousted from Alexandria and forced into exile in the Syrian desert. Most rulers would have accepted defeat or fled into obscurity. Cleopatra raised an army of mercenaries. While Cleopatra gathered troops along the border, the giant of the Mediterranean world arrived on Egypt's shores, Julius Caesar. Rome was engulfed in its own brutal civil war, and Caesar was pursuing his bitter rival, Pompey the Great. Hoping to win Caesar's favor, Ptolemy XIII's advisors made a catastrophic mistake. They assassinated Pompey and presented his severed head to Caesar as a gift. Caesar was appalled. He demanded order, occupied the royal palace in Alexandria, and summoned both Ptolemy and Cleopatra to reconcile. Ptolemy's forces blockaded the city, determined to keep Cleopatra from ever reaching Caesar. But Cleopatra understood that extraordinary circumstances required extraordinary daring. Under the cloak of darkness, the 21-year-old queen sailed into Alexandria in a small fishing boat accompanied by a single loyal servant, Apollodorus. Wrapped inside a heavy hemp sack, or, as legend famously retells, a rolled up oriental carpet, she was smuggled directly into Caesar's private quarters inside the royal palace. When the servant unrolled the bundle, the deposed queen of Egypt stood before the most powerful man in Rome. She did not plead for mercy. She offered him an alliance. Caesar was captivated, not merely by her physical presence, but by her sharp intellect, her charismatic voice, and her audacious courage. The Alexandrian War followed. Roman legionaries and Egyptian forces clashed in the streets. In the chaos, the legendary Library of Alexandria caught fire, and Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile while trying to escape in his heavy golden armor. Cleopatra was restored to the throne, now as co ruler alongside her even younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. But everyone knew who held true authority. To secure her crown, Cleopatra bore Caesar a son named Ptolemy Caesar, nicknamed Caesarion, Little Caesar. In 46 BCE, she traveled to Rome as a client monarch. Her presence sent shockwaves through the conservative Roman Senate. Caesar erected a golden statue of Cleopatra inside the Temple of Venus Genitrix, directly defying Roman social norms. Romans whispered that this Eastern queen was seducing their ruler, threatening the fundamental ideals of the Republic. Then came the Ides of March, 44 BCE. A conspiracy of senators assassinated Julius Caesar on the Senate floor. Cleopatra's protector was dead. Fearing for her life and the safety of her young son, Cleopatra fled Rome in the night and sailed back to Alexandria. Once home, her younger brother conveniently died, likely poisoned on her orders, and Cleopatra elevated her 3-year-old son, Caesarion, to co-ruler. She had secured Egypt, but across the Mediterranean, a massive power vacuum was about to ignite a fresh firestorm. In the wake of Caesar's death, his empire was split between two victorious warlords: Octavian, Caesar's adopted young heir, who controlled the West, and Mark Antony, Caesar's premier general, who took control of the wealthy East. To fund his upcoming military campaign against the Parthian Empire, Mark Antony needed Egypt's vast wealth and grain supplies. In 41 BCE, he summoned Cleopatra to meet him at Tarsus in modern day Turkey. Cleopatra knew this meeting would define the future of her kingdom. She did not arrive as a vassal begging for favor. She arrived as a living goddess. She sailed up the Cydnus River aboard a magnificent barge with a gilded stern, purple silk sails, and silver oars that beat time to the music of flutes and lyres. Cleopatra lay beneath a canopy of gold cloth, dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, while young boys dressed as Cupids fanned her. The air was thick with costly incense. The crowds along the riverbanks marveled. Word spread fast. Aphrodite had come to revel with Dionysus. Mark Antony was completely entranced. Unlike Caesar, who had been a mentor figure, Antony was a passionate, romantic warrior who shared Cleopatra's appetite for grandeur. Their political alliance quickly blossomed into an intense love affair. Antony promised to protect Egypt and eliminate Cleopatra's dynastic rivals. In return, Cleopatra opened the royal treasury to finance his legions. Together in Alexandria, they formed a legendary drinking society known as the Inimitable Livers, spending nights indulging in lavish feasts and roaming the streets of the city in disguise. Together, they would have three children: twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and a younger son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. While Antony and Cleopatra lived like royalty in Alexandria, back in Rome, Octavian was waging a brilliant campaign of propaganda. Octavian painted Antony as a weak willed commander who had been bewitched by an Eastern enchantress. He claimed Antony had abandoned his Roman heritage, his Roman wife, and his duty to the Republic. The breaking point arrived in 34 BCE during a ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria. Antony declared Cleopatra Queen of Kings, crowned young Caesarion as the legitimate heir of Julius Caesar, and distributed vast territories of the Roman East to his children with Cleopatra. To Octavian, this was high treason. He seized Antony's private will from the Temple of the Vesta in Rome and read it publicly to the Senate. In it, Antony requested to be buried alongside Cleopatra in Alexandria rather than in Rome. The Senate was outraged. Octavian did not declare war on Antony. That would cause another unpopular civil war among Romans. Instead, Octavian declared war on Cleopatra. The climax came in 31 BCE at the Battle of Actium, a massive naval engagement off the coast of Greece. Octavian's skilled admiral, Agrippa, trapped the joint fleet of Antony and Cleopatra. As the battle turned against them, Cleopatra realized all was lost. She broke through the enemy blockade with her flagship and set sail for Egypt. Seeing her ships leave, Antony abandoned his own men and fled after her. His army surrendered. His reputation was shattered. The end of the ancient Egyptian empire was now only a matter of time. By the summer of 30 BCE, Octavian's legions landed in Egypt. Resistance collapsed. As enemy troops closed in on Alexandria, Mark Antony received a false rumor that Cleopatra had already committed suicide inside her monumental tomb. Overcome with grief and knowing capture meant public humiliation, Antony drew his sword and plunged it into his own abdomen. Upon learning that she was still alive, the dying general was carried to her mausoleum. He died in Cleopatra's arms. Octavian entered Alexandria as a conqueror. He took Cleopatra prisoner, intending to drag her through the streets of Rome in chains as the ultimate trophy of his victory. Cleopatra understood the fate that awaited her. She was 39 years old. She had ruled Egypt for 21 years, preserved her nation's independence against the greatest empire on earth, and lived as a living deity. she would not end her life as a Roman spectacle. On August 12th, 30 BCE, after sending a sealed letter to Octavian requesting to be buried alongside Antony, Cleopatra locked herself in her royal chambers with two trusted handmaidens, Iris and Charmian. According to ancient writers like Plutarch, a basket of figs was smuggled past Octavian's guards. Hidden beneath the leaves was a venomous cobra, an asp, the sacred symbol of Egyptian royalty. Cleopatra dressed in her finest royal robes, placed the golden diadem upon her head, and applied the deadly serpent to her skin. When Octavian's guards burst into the chamber, they found the last pharaoh of Egypt lying peacefully dead on a golden couch with her maidens dying at her feet. With Cleopatra's death, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended. Caesarion was hunted down and executed by Octavian to eliminate any remaining bloodline of Julius Caesar. Egypt was annexed as a province of the Roman Empire. The 3,000-year-old era of the Egyptian pharaohs was over forever. Octavian would return to Rome, rename himself Augustus, and become the first emperor of Rome. He tried to erase Cleopatra's legacy, painting her as a foreign demon who led a brave general astray. But history could not dim her light. Cleopatra VII was not merely a tragic romantic figure. She was a master diplomat, a brilliant linguist, a mother, and a formidable ruler who fought with everything she had to preserve the independence of her kingdom against an overwhelming empire. Over 2,000 years later, empires have crumbled to dust, but the name Cleopatra still echoes across the ages, the ultimate symbol of beauty, power, and defiance.